The definition of conviction is a firmly held belief. Leadership looks different for each person, but every leader has strong convictions that pave the way for how they guide their people. Whether you're an experienced leader, a current leader, a novice leader, or a soon-to-be leader, this podcast is a must for you. Through this show, you will hear leaders share their convictions, the struggles they face, and the challenges they have overcome by staying true to their convictions. Leadership can be hard and it can be lonely. I aim to connect you with leaders who have walked the journey and want to show others the way. This is Bo Vincent, and you're listening to The Conviction of a Leader. Welcome back to The Conviction of the Leader. I'm excited to have a special guest today, Kirstin Maxwell. I'm so excited to speak with you. I know this conversation and interview is going to be so good, not just because it's the conviction of a leader, but because of your journey and your story. And I know that you're a great communicator and speaker, but Kirstin, thank you for joining us. And then I want to introduce you, but hey.
Absolutely. Thanks
Oh,
so much
no
for having me.
problem. So Kirstin Maxwell runs a $30 million premium insurance agency in Texas. What city are you in?
So I'm physically located in Webster, New
Webster, New
York. I
York.
actually live in New
Okay,
York.
great. Well, we're gonna
Yes.
dive into that too, being a leader from a distance or remotely, and how that's
Yep.
been for you in your journey. So, Kristin currently has 25 staff members. They're writing around 600 to 700 items per month at her agency. She has been crushing it since she stepped into the game at age 19, and we won't say how old she is now. She's probably like 23, 24 at this point, but she stepped on stage at 19. Her mom thrusted her into the spotlight because of her amazing knowledge and ability to speak to others and communicate what's on her mind and help teach other people how to do what she does. But at 19, she was thrust onto a stage at a big corporate company. We won't say the name at this point, but a lot of you will be able to piece together the company that she works with. But she was thrust on stage at a regional conference, and she did so well. They recruited her to be a consultant and go out and help 13 of the largest, best agencies in the territory. These weren't bottom performers. She was asked to go help top performers in the area be better and perform at a higher level. She then, uh, did you bought your own agency, right? You then bought your own agency,
Yeah, I started a
started
scratch
a scratch
agency.
agency. So those in insurance will know the scratch just means started at zero all the way at bottom,
Right.
very, very zero. That means no customers. Started at zero, but then quickly realized that, hey, I love insurance, but with a baby at home, this is extremely hard. And she sold to the closest person in her family. No, I'm just kidding. You sold it to your uncle, right?
Right. My mom's younger brother. He's 3 years older
3 years
than
older.
me.
So oh wow. So that's
Right.
that's pretty close in age. Okay, so sold it to your 3 year older uncle, and you are married to Bill, who I've met. Bill is an awesome guy. He's got
Right.
high integrity. His character is hilarious, but also he just is a great guy. Which I know that behind most leaders, there's also a spouse or somebody supporting them. So we'll talk about Bill a little bit later too and give him the props he deserves. But you also have 4 kids. Now this is where it's going to be tough for me to hide because you look so young and so great. But you have a 22-year-old, a 17-year
Thanks.
old, a
Yeah.
12-year-old, and a 2-year-old that's named John C. Maxwell, which I love it
Yes.
and it resonates with me because I also, as you know, love leadership. And
Yeah.
you work with let's see, your aunt and or your
No, my
sister and
sister
your
and my
wow,
daughter.
and your mother.
And my husband
Okay.
and my mother.
So it is
Right.
a family business to a T, no way around it.
Right.
Okay. So next month, which you are running at the helm of your mother's agency currently, but next month,
Right.
30 years as an agency. So I can't wait
Yes.
later on in the season to speak to your mom, but I'm glad that I have you on today. So, what did I leave out in this long intro bio about you?
Gosh, I can't really think of a ton of interesting information. Just, I guess you said that I started out speaking at 19, but before
Yes.
that, I was actually 12 when my mom
Oh,
opened the
yes.
agency, and I started out telemarketing out of the phone book in '94 at the age of 12. And so that's a fun fact. Back in
No,
those
that's
days,
amazing.
we didn't have just fancy marketing stuff. So my sister and I would stuff envelopes on the weekends and we would go door to door and do door hangers and we would do telemarketing from the phone book and file. And it just really speaks to my mom's
Yeah.
tenacity and her dedication to be successful in those early
Wow.
days, which was really a foundational part of my leadership journey,
Which
obviously.
I love talking about the leadership journey, but also I love talking about those that went before us and showed us the way. Because when somebody goes before us and is able to show us exactly what they learned, how they learned it, how they've overcome it, what to look out for, it really does help us become a better leader in less time. And that's one of my biggest convictions is I believe I was called to create leaders, help build them up in less time than it took me. I don't want them to see every downfall, every problem that I ever seen. So what has it been like? I don't want to say following in the footsteps of your mother because I think that she would also tell you that you have just blazed your own path. But what has it been like in that environment working with your mother and so many close family members?
It's great. We all have different strengths and
Yeah.
weaknesses, and I take no offense whatsoever to saying people saying that I'm in my mother's footsteps because that's
Yeah.
such an honor. She's done such an amazing job, and she's so well known for being of service to other agents, and so that's something that I'm extremely proud of. I am actually a fourth generation insurance
Fourth.
agent. So this
Wow.
goes way, way back. My mom's dad's dad owned a life insurance agency, and he would walk door to door and collect the premiums. And so this has been kind of going on a long time. My mother's mother was employed at a large independent agency for I don't know 40 years or something, but back then the women weren't allowed to
Oh,
get licensed. They just wrote the policies and the men made the money and got the licenses. And actually up until my mom opened her Allstate agency, the most she ever made was $20,000 a year, even though she
wow.
already had 15 years of experience. So it's actually quite inspirational to me that she was able to kind of take that leap of faith and put herself out there and take that risk back in those
Wow.
days and create something that I am so proud to really work
Oh,
with her
you
and
should
run
be
on a daily
proud.
basis. It's
I
very
love your
inspirational.
mother. I mean, she's such a great person, great leader, great agency owner, and she really has helped shape the company as an agency owner. And she has her hands in so many other agents' success, and she would not admit that. But I know that many people that have spoke to me about Laura have said that. But
Oh, yeah.
then let's move on to you. So we are thankful for the generation before us and our parents, but you, my friend, are quite loved also. So I think it's so great to see that you are a different
Oh,
person than your mother, but you have some of the greatest
absolutely.
uh, things about your mother. I'm trying to think of how to say that. Like people love you just like, and they trust you just like they love your mom. And I got to meet you, which was such a pleasure. I was sitting at the executive lounge or Marriott lounge in
Yep.
Nashville. Uh, and
In Nashville.
you were sitting next to your mother and I was talking to her and you walked up. So it was such a pleasure to meet you. And I don't know if you remember this, but I said, "Oh, my wife's name is Kristin." So it's super easy.
I do remember that
Yep,
with an
Chris,
O.
and you're an I, which is also very different. So,
Right.
but it's super cool to have you on the show because I love to see like my relationships and journeys and friendships grow in the industry because even though leadership is my thing, I still consider myself a student. And I love to hear so much from people like you in your journey because if I can take a couple things, it only helps the people that I'm able to have the privilege to lead beside. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So you got to speak in at the Midwest Forum in Chicago, and I heard some really good things. But you brought somebody along with you, didn't you? Who'd you bring?
Yeah, my daughter, my
So tell me
22-year-old.
about that. So now you're getting to introduce your 22-year-old to the life that you were introduced to only a couple years ago.
Yeah, she actually has been in the agency since she was
Wow.
11. She started out with the young telemarketing as well. And it's funny because we're all
Yeah.
similar in a lot of senses, but my daughter is a
Yeah.
shark. She is,
She's a killer.
definitely more
Yeah.
of a shark than I
She's a
am. She
killer.
is yeah, she's got a killer instinct for sure. I've seen her take a headset off of a producer and say, "Mr. Jones, I can't believe you're not gonna take advantage of this today," when she was
She's like,
16
"I'm
years
not
old.
letting you miss
So
this. I have to do this. I'm
yes.
sorry."
So, yeah. So she's definitely got that killer instinct, and she's extremely organized. She's just an incredible
Wow.
young woman, and I'm very, very proud of her. But yeah, we're kind of getting her out there into the insurance space and getting her into the events, and she really loves coordinating
That's
events. So it's
that's
something
awesome.
she's
I
really
I can't
passionate
wait
about.
to
So
meet her in the
yeah.
future. Actually, I had the privilege. Your mother and Mike Daniels asked me to speak at the Texas Forum, so I'm going to be excited to be there and share what I can to help others and see you and your
Yeah.
husband and your meet your daughter. Super excited about that. But what a journey. So one thing I've learned over the years is that in America specifically, and maybe all over the world, we describe leaders based on their skills. So, oh, Kristin is such a great communicator, or she is this or that. And they describe your skills and your tools as why you're a great leader, which I think doesn't make sense. And what I've learned over the years is that actually, I think leaders should be described like doctors, like carpenters, based on what they create. So you just were talking about how your daughter has become already at such a young age, such a phenomenal leader already. It sounds like sales shark, leader, organized person already, but that is a
Yeah.
representation of your mom's leadership and then your leadership. And that's how we should describe leaders. So I love the just who you are. And this is why I ask people like you to be on the podcast, because you line up with what I fundamentally believe leaders should be like, which leads me to uh, the convictions of a leader, which is what the podcast is called. But the conviction of a leader is a deeply held belief, I believe, that often guides most decisions of leaders in the way they interact with their team, their customers, guests, anybody they interact with. So, do you have any convictions that have really just helped guide you and lead you on a daily basis? Let's hear
Yes.
them.
So our business is obviously
Mhm.
insurance. And I think it's something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's something that I've grown up with, and I really appreciate the importance of
Yeah.
it. But even deeper than that, what I have found is that my passion and my calling is truly to develop our staff. It's something that I'm very convicted about. We had actually three of our producers last year who bought their first home.
That's huge.
And I feel so convicted that my calling is truly to help develop leaders in our organization. And that's really what gets me out of bed in the morning and keeps me going in this
Yeah.
industry. I'm so incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I've had through this business to be able to provide for my children, for the health insurance that we
Yeah.
have, for the ability that we have financially to support ourselves. And just being able to identify the wonderful qualities in our staff and elevate them to that next
Yeah.
level is something that I'm incredibly
I
passionate
love that.
about.
So, what what tools, what avenues do you use to help develop them? What are you guys doing?
So the cornerstone of our organization is really our
Mm,
core
let's
values.
hear 'em.
So
Let's
we
hear some of them. Yeah.
so we have worked okay, so
Okay.
resilience is super important. Being
Yeah.
coachable is probably the number one most
Mm,
important core value that we have, because if you're just sitting in your box, you're not getting anywhere. And team first, we consistently put our team above
mm,
anything else. If I was not good for this organization, I would take myself out of it. It is not about any one person, it is always
yeah.
about the collective whole. So it's really, really incredible for us to have those in place. It's something that we put in place 5, 6 years ago when we started working with our business coach. And those core values really
Yeah.
drive what we do on a daily basis. We hire and fire based on them, And we consistently evaluate our staff to make sure that they are living within those core values and it's something that we are
Wow.
upholding.
That's so cool. And you may have heard me say this before, but I used to say, and I still say it quite a bit, we love insurance, but we love people more. And that was my driving mantra. It became a filter. And then when I started speaking at conferences, it just came out more and it turned into more of a tagline slash marketing. But at the core, it really has always been why I wanted to run the business and start a business, is that to show people that I love them more than what they buy from me, than insurance, and then what my staff sells. So I do believe that it does start at the top, and having a clear vision and values keeps you in line. And I like to think of your clearest convictions and core values are like a filter. And when you run things through that and say, does this show my staff that I love them more than insurance? Does this show my customer when I make these changes to the process that I show them? Am I showing them that I love profit more than people? Am I showing them that I love insurance more than I actually love the person? So I love that you said that, and it really lines up with my core values and who I am. So, you know, this is probably a little bit unique, your situation, but this question I want to ask you is, leadership can be lonely, but you work with some people that are very close to you. Can that at times feel lonely, or do you feel like you have built-in people that help hold you accountable, and you're not as lonely? Do you feel like you need alone time?
I feel like I'm not at all, and that's one of the really great things about our leadership team. Our leadership team is comprised of myself, my mother, my husband, who runs our sales
Wow.
team, and then Grace is the operations manager, and she's been with us for 22
Wow.
years, and she was with the claims office for 14 years prior to that. So she's just as good as blood.
Right.
So that's kind of one of the magical things about our team is that we are all very different. We have very different strengths and weaknesses, and we do always have somebody there to bounce things off of and different perspectives. And we work very well together. So it's really not so lonely for us. But I have been in situations in the past that were lonely. And so I definitely understand where that
Yeah.
perspective can come from. But I think it's so important to make sure that you're building those
So
people
true.
around you that will support you and that are congruent with your beliefs so that you never feel like you're in it alone because nobody can do it
No,
alone.
not at all. No, and I love that you have that unique perspective and support system built in, because many don't. And I think that also is why, and maybe I'm speaking for you, but you tell me, is that why you feel so capable and supported to help other agents, because you have such good support around you within your agency and your family already?
I think that's definitely provided a great
Yeah.
foundation, but honestly, I think a lot of times leaders feel like there's a need for them to kind of put a
Yeah.
mask
So
on
true.
and be who other people expect them to be. And very early on in my leadership journey, I committed not to do
Right.
that. I lead very
Mhm.
authentically and I share from my heart. And I believe that whenever you do that, people will know your intentions and they'll
Oh, yeah.
trust you. And that is what builds incredible
Oh, so
teams.
true. People love authentic leaders. They don't like robots. They don't like people that tell you how great everything is all the time, but can never admit to any faults, stumbles, that they've always been perfect. They don't make mistakes. Yes. So you are so wise beyond your years, and I love hearing your journey. So let's talk a little bit more about your journey. Have you had some stumbles or challenges along the way? Now I know, and I didn't get to tell all our listeners this, but Kristin actually has held every single position within the agency. So maybe walk us through, as you grew your position, being your mother was the owner, what challenges did
Right.
you see or face along the way, going from one position to the next, or was it smooth sailing from entry level to where you're at today?
Well, I started out, like I said,
Yeah.
telemarketing and doing our filing and
Mhm.
taking out the trash. And once I was 18, I think I got my license the day of my
That's so
18th
cool.
birthday. And so I went into first kind of a customer
Yeah.
service role where I was taking payments, closing out the deposit, and doing things like that. And then I went into again, a telemarketing role. And then when I was 19, I actually ran our telemarketing team, which was 7 of my friends from high school who needed
Nice.
jobs. And so we employed all my
Cool.
friends and we did telemarketing. And back in those days, we had stacks of
Oh, yeah.
leads
Oh,
on
yeah.
papers that we would call. And then I went into a sales role, and then I went into sales management. And now the structure is that I'm our agency's integrator. So
Yes.
I look at the different departments and help make decisions that will be best for the agency as a whole. And I kind of see myself as head hole filler. So whatever needs to be done, I just jump in and take care of it and help organize that kind of stuff. And I didn't get promoted to leadership until 2018. And it wasn't just because of my relation, it was because of a deep love that I have for my mother. And I could see that there were certain things that stressed her out or things that she didn't want to do or didn't feel comfortable doing. And so those were all the things that I volunteered for, simply just to take the stress off of her plate. But it really helped to develop me as a leader because I found things that I was good at that she wasn't good at. And it really helps us to kind of work together and offset each other's strengths and
Wow.
weaknesses.
Thank you for sharing that. I heard this a long time ago, so it's not my saying, but I have these sayings. I call them Bo's Book of One Liners because I use a lot of them. But wealthy people are inherently humble. And I don't mean wealthy just financially, because they know the source of their success. And you mentioned about God already. So I believe that people are inherently humble when they understand the success. We put in the hard work, but the harvest really doesn't come necessarily from our hands. It comes from our hard work, and the harvest is way outside of our control. So I love that you have a source of strength that I have, and we've talked about off camera too. So I know that you're being true to who you are, and I love that you are honoring your mom and hard work and the generation before you, and it's shown that your daughter how to honor uh, your mother essentially. And I love that. So it goes way beyond work, and your hard work has probably helped you from having as many challenges, it sounds like. So you just said that you've busted your butt from one position to the next. I don't think anybody would probably describe you as a lazy person who's rode on the coattails of anybody.
No,
So how cool is that? Like this, do you ever look back and just think about how blessed you are and the agency is and how much it's grown?
absolutely. Absolutely. It actually really hit me when COVID
Yeah.
first came out. And I've been so grateful before then, but when COVID first came out, it was really impactful for me. And I just sat in my backyard and drank a beer with my dog
Oh,
and cried because I just thought about how blessed we
so
are
blessed.
to be able to continue to support ourselves. And my oldest daughter, Jackie, has a terrible
Mm.
health condition, and so we're able to provide incredible health insurance for her so that she can get the things that she needs for that. And I feel like we provide our staff with a wonderful culture where they can come to work every day and feel like they're building something that they can be
Yeah.
proud of. And it's not just that they're building our dream,
Yes.
but they have a significant role in that dream
So
as well.
important.
And so I feel like we're able to give them purpose and meaning, and just to be able to kind of continue that throughout COVID. As a matter of fact, our agency and our staff made more money throughout that time period than we ever had in our history of the agency. So I just felt like it really spoke to the opportunity that we had to
Mm.
continue and work from home when necessary, still protect our staff, and just continue to thrive. And it was just very, very impactful
That's
for me.
that's awesome. And I love that you take time to take inventory and see your blessings, because I I think you know this, but maybe you don't. 4 years ago, I opened my agency. Before that, I was in a corporate role in multi-state, multi-unit, regional, then district, and you know, general manager. So it's been a long journey for myself also, and being able to see the dreams that were laid on my heart come to fruition as an owner, but a leader that I wanted to, because there's so many things that most businesses handcuff their leaders on of what they just can't do. And I always used to say, well, I can do up to this level, but I can't because I'm not allowed to. And once I had
Right.
my own business, I said, I'm just going to run it exactly how I've wanted to. And it sounds like that's what you and your mother and Bill have been able to do. And just hearing you talk about being in the backyard, drinking a beer with your dog and having a little cry, I think it's important because I think about how blessed I am to walk into an agency that I own, that my name's on it, how blessed I am to speak with people like you that actually want to have a conversation with me. It's such a blessing because I think back and I can remember days when it wasn't as easy. So I'm
Yeah.
blessed to hear your journey because your journey blesses me and also shows me. And I hope that there's listeners out there that have maybe a family business slash insurance they want to get into and they can learn from your journey and see that it's possible. Because how many people have said to you, "Oh, you work with all your family, that must be horrible." Has anybody ever said that to you? Yeah,
So many people say that to me actually, and it's really not at all. And I think really the reason why it's not is because we always keep the good of the business at the
good.
priority. We don't allow any kind of
Mhm.
deviation from that. The good of the whole is always more important than the good of just one person. And so I think whenever we collectively come together and have those same values and that same
Wow.
intent, it is no longer about
So
a single person, and it's just it just
wow.
flows.
So it's not about I. You even said that. It's about for the good of the team. So where did you learn some of these values? Was it your journey? Was it your mother? Was it EOS? Because I'm actually pretty familiar with EOS and understanding visionaries and
Yeah.
integrators. And I know that that was built for bigger companies, but at this point, you are a bigger, medium sized small business. And I would love to just hear about where that approach came from and where did you learn some of these?
I think it's probably just collective of
Yeah.
some of all of that. I feel like I'm still learning as a leader and I'm still growing. I feel like my husband's addition to my life 6 years ago was an incredible
Yeah.
addition, and he's just given me a ton of structure. His strength is really in enforcing standards and setting standards and holding people to those standards and helping them to
Yeah.
rise to that bar. And I have more of a tendency to love
Yeah.
everyone. I was never able to play a team sport because I wanted everybody to win and love each other and just hug. And there's a place
Yeah.
for that in
There is.
leadership, and it's also great to have someone who is able to hold a line and give the people on the team something to aspire to. So together we make a really great team, and I feel like adding him to our agency, it's been 3 years ago
Wow.
now, 2.5 years ago that he came on board with us has just really catapulted us into the next level of success. And we're still
Oh, yeah.
growing and learning. We just had a meeting with our EOS coach on Thursday all day, and so we've got some plans in store for the remainder of this year and going forward. And it just keeps us always pushing each other to the
That's
next
so great.
level.
I have a sister-in-law who works for EOS and just been very familiar with the process and having great conversations with her. And I know she's going to listen to this, so I want to remind her she needs to be a guest on this season. So because she has so much value too.
Yes,
But I
it's
love that
incredible.
you still have so the bigger and the better essentially your agency has gotten. It's you haven't stopped seeking support outside of your four walls, have you?
Oh,
And what are you doing? What are you
absolutely
doing?
not. So I think the big thing is that we delegate
Yeah,
anything that we can.
true.
I
Us
work
too.
closely with several vendors. We can't effectively do everything on
No.
our own. So, as many things as I can possibly delegate or use a software to make something easier, more efficient, we really try to focus on that because either you have to have a piece of technology or a person in place that you can delegate things to so that you can be more effective and get more things accomplished. And I think the better that you can do that, the faster you can get to the next level of
So
success.
so
So
true.
we've been really focusing on trying to do that and just hire. We've been trying to hire for the past 2 years, and it's been a struggle because my husband is incredibly effective with building a sales
Mhm.
team. And the more his team sells, the more the rest of the agency breaks, and we have to rebuild and we have to add
Yeah,
more people. And it's a wonderful
it
problem
is.
to have, but we have a struggle with that. And so it's been interesting to try and remedy that over the last couple of years. But it's taught me a ton about hiring because that's nearly all I
Yeah.
do now is
So,
hire.
what type of training, what type of support are you doing for yourself, for the agency? You talked about delegating, but what are those things? Some of those maybe details or training leadership outside of your agency.
Yeah, so we do participate in the training platforms like CWC. We also have a John C. Maxwell leadership
Cool.
course that my husband purchased years ago, that we have available for people in our agency who want to study leadership and get to that
Oh,
next level. We have Grant Cardone's leadership courses on selling and leadership. And so those are incredibly
yeah,
important for people who seek to do better in their sales careers. So we're firm believers in studying what other people
yeah,
have done and implementing those things. We also have a recommended reading list that we distribute to our staff, so that they can try to take themselves to the next level with all of the. I'm sure you see behind me,
looks,
our that's
yeah,
half of our
I
library.
love it.
Yeah, so we're big fans in just personal development and taking yourself to the next level by studying what other people
Yeah,
do. And really, that was a foundational part of my mother's leadership journey. Is whenever she first started out, she just called up the top agents in
yeah,
the country and said, "Can I fly out to your office and see what you're doing?" And she did that for many many years, and she continues to do that. You never know who you're going to pop on Zoom with
right.
my mom. She'll just say, "Hey, we have a Zoom with so and so at this
She
time." And I'm like,
definitely,
"Okay, we'll be there."
definitely speaks to a lot of people.
She does. She brings people together. But it's wonderful because you get to kind of get a cheat sheet and a shortcut to people who are already doing things very well, and putting all of that together and figuring out how you're going to implement it and what that looks like with your own spin on it,
Yeah,
I think is extremely
so true.
valuable.
I totally like line up with what you're saying. And over the, let's see, I've been a leader 18 years now, or a man, we could say manager, but I'm going to say leader for 18 years
Right.
now. And I've just kept a lot of information in my head. And over the last 10 years, I've started to bring it onto paper, and which was so important because by the time I opened an agency, a lot of the stuff that we were doing are things that I had in my head or wrote out that I would want to do, or that I was doing or learned in leadership, or where I learned it from, who I learned it from. And I've had the pleasure, and I'm extremely humbled because this is yet another dream that God has let me come to fruition. But I started a leadership academy with CWC, and it's a one quarter, and it's about the three key leadership steps that I've learned over the years, and then I put them into three steps, and now I'm teaching them to other people, which is just so humbling to hear. And I love that other people have similar journeys. There's some people that go to college, read a bunch of books, and that's where they get their leadership from. There's some that learn by just mimicking somebody like maybe Grant Cardone, and then there's some people that learn from everybody. And I'd like to think that that's been me, is that a college dropout or failed out, and I had a father that's been an addict, and seen a lot of things with good and bad in my life. I've been able to learn from the best leaders and the worst leaders, and be able to come together on who I want to be, or who God has created me to be, and what vision I can see as a leader. So let me ask you this: what how would you characterize your leadership or your approach to leadership?
I think it's just very
Mhm.
authentic. I really don't get in my head about what somebody's going to think about something. I honestly just try to share from my heart. And of course, with the culmination of my history and my background, my lens is very
Mhm.
unique to me. And so I try to apply that whenever leading people, because I feel that I have been through some things that uniquely
Yeah.
qualify me as a leader, and the lessons that I've had to learn the hard way. I think it's important for me to share those with the people that I'm leading so that they have their best opportunity for
Oh, that's
success.
great. So before I bought an insurance agency, I was a remote leader. Let's just call it what it is. I saw my staff. I had 600 employees spread out over 3 states, and I really only got to see a handful of them once a quarter. And probably being more honest, probably once every 4 months, I got to see everybody in person, travel to their location. We did have Zooms back then. We did have phones, but it was a remote. I was a remote leader. Now, some agents,
Well,
yeah,
600 is a
but
lot.
some agents, some owners that listen to this podcast, they have all their staff immediately in front of them. Well, you and I are very similar in the fact that I opened in 2019 of October, and 4 months later, 5 months later, COVID hit and we went remote, never came back. I thankfully, because like you just said, I was uniquely qualified to lead people remote. And quite frankly,
There you
it
go.
challenges different challenges, but at the same time, I see so many benefits to leading people remote. Now, I want to hear about your remote journey leading people because you don't even live in the state your business is in. So let's dive into
I
that. I think
know.
people will be blown
Okay.
away by what you've learned and how you do it.
So we started out in Corpus Christi,
Okay.
Texas, and that was where I was raised and where I lived until my early 20s. My ex-husband was in the military, and so we traveled
Yeah.
to different
Navy base.
states and lived in different areas. And in 2012, we got a voice over IP system. I was living in Louisiana, and my mother said, "Why don't you come to work for me again?" Because I had taken some time off and was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And once we were able to do the remote thing, I did. My mom actually has been living in Canada the majority of the past 17 years. I think she and her husband have been married. And so they've kind of gone back and forth. He is actually an air traffic
Yes.
controller
I know him
in
too.
Toronto. And yeah, so the remote thing is something that we did before it was
Hmm.
cool because of that. And then I met my husband in 2018, and we opened our second location in Temple,
Wow.
Texas, in 2021. So that's about a
Yep.
4-hour time span between Corpus Christi
Okay.
and Temple. So it's
Yes.
pretty far from each other. But it's actually been a huge blessing because in many cases, we may be taking rates in one area and not in
Yeah.
the other, or we may have hiring struggles in one and not the other. We may have natural disasters or power outages, internet outages in one and not the other. And so it really has been quite an advantage to us to have all of our eggs not
Yeah.
in one basket in that sense. My sister also works for us, and she is living outside of Tulsa. So she's kind of off on in
Another area.
another area. And then, yeah, my husband is from upstate
Okay.
New York. And so we also have 3 employees who work out of the same guy's
Ah,
basement in upstate New York.
nice.
Yeah,
I
they're
did
all
not know
friends,
that.
and 2 are brothers, and so
Interesting.
we actually have them working out of each other's basement, and just to have that energy and
Yeah.
camaraderie. And so that is something that we really value, and we really like an in-person kind of situation, just because it does help lend itself to that energy, and for our staff to hear each other talking and be able to have that camaraderie with each other. But it also works just fine with us being remote. I do not hire people remotely right out of the gate. I really prefer for them to be immersed in our
Right.
culture and to get used to us. And then, for instance, later this year, we have one of our young ladies who's moving to Germany because her husband is in the
Wow.
army, and she'll stay on with us in Germany. And so, if I believe in someone and they fit our culture and our core values, then we just keep them on and keep it going. But back in December, our family relocated to upstate New York. where my husband's originally
What's
from.
that been
So
like for you?
we've been running the agency remotely. It's
Nice.
been great, honestly. We've had a very mild winter, thankfully, this year. But I lived in
Okay,
Colorado for
okay.
6 years
Sorry to
before,
interrupt
so
your
it
story.
really it's
Yeah,
no, it's honestly it really hasn't been bad at all. We've only had a few snows, but the Italian food's
right.
awesome, and my husband has some friends who are very very close with him since childhood, and so they are our
Nice.
family, and his biological family is also here, and so it's important for us to raise
Are
our
all 4 of
kiddos
your kids
around our
there too?
family. No, my oldest is still in Central
Wow,
Texas. She's been on her own since she was 18, done her
independent,
own
yep.
thing, paid her own bills for 4 years now. And so she has her own lease that is going to be up in June, and then she's going to decide where she's going to continue her schooling. So she applied to 7 colleges and got into all
Wow,
7. So 3 in New York and 4 in Texas. So we're trying to figure out where
I'm
she's
not
going next.
surprised, not
So
surprised.
that's our remote craziness in a nutshell, but it's actually been really good. We've actually broken our monthly item record every month since we left
Wow,
Texas. So it really hasn't had any
that's
impact on the agency at
unreal.
all.
That's amazing as you continue to grow.
Yeah.
So
We have
you
incredible
do.
staff. They
You
just
do.
keep it
I can
going.
see why. I can see why. Because people like to follow, I always say this. So, leaders or eagles is what I refer to them. So, eagles fly really high, and I've never seen an eagle fly with anything but an eagle. Have you ever seen an eagle flying with a pigeon or a turkey?
I have
So,
not.
they only fly with leaders.
Turkey.
Yep.
I don't think
No, they
turkeys
don't.
even really fly. They just kind of
Yeah,
jump.
and there's probably some hunters on that are listeners that yeah, like Craig's a big turkey hunter. But anyways, you nobody hunts an eagle, but I love that you have put together great leaders that are eagles that are attracting. You do attract who you are, and you've said this multiple times, and I 100% align with you is that you have to be genuine because you will attract who you are. If you're ingenuine, you're going to attract people that are not like you that are ingenuine also. So when you are authentic, you do
Right.
attract authenticity. And those that are not authentic or genuine, don't they stick out like a sore thumb?
They stick
It's
out like
like,
a
you
sore
are such a
thumb.
BSer. I'm sorry. You are not
Yeah.
like us, man.
No, we can smell it quick. My husband especially, he's very good at
Well,
reading
good.
people, and so we make sure that none of that gets on
Good.
our team.
So, what is the most, I guess, biggest or most common misconception about remote work that you've been able to overcome or you've encountered, maybe addressed it? Because trust me, not only do you work with your family, but you're remote, and those are like the hottest topics whenever I go anywhere. Is like, how do you run your agency remote? Or you might be saying, people might be saying, how do you work with your family? How do you run it remote? So let's hear about what you've encountered running remote, or what you've maybe not run into that other people think you would run into.
Yeah, I think that the reason why people think it's difficult is because so often as leaders, we keep people on
Mm,
our team longer
yeah,
than we should.
that is true.
I see this
Mm,
so often with agents where they feel handcuffed to
yeah.
staff because they feel like, oh, this person's the only person who knows
Ugh,
how to do this
yes,
XYZ process, or this producer is producing X number of items, and I don't know if I could replace that, and I have to hit my goals, or I can't pay my bills. Which I've owned an agency, and I can completely
right.
appreciate that perspective and how scary it is, but I think it's also incredibly important that we prioritize building a team that is functional with or without us. My mother actually took me at the age of 13 to a conference with Michael Gerber, who was the author of The E-Myth Revisited, which is a really odd
Yeah,
childhood I'm just now discovering in my mind. But he really preaches about creating systems and processes that work when you're not
mm,
there. And so I think that's an incredibly important piece of making sure that you will be successful and not being handcuffed to your business 24 hours a day. There are people in place, and there are processes and systems in place to make sure that things get done the right way, and then you just put people in the spots that you can
yeah,
trust. Truly, I would trust my staff with my life, with my children's lives, and I do. They're some of my
mm,
best friends. And yesterday, texting Happy Easter, we're truly just completely involved with each other, and it's so important. because they know exactly what we
Yeah.
expect at all times. And so when we have a new person in the agency, or there's a maybe an upset client or anything, our staff members know exactly how we would want those situations handled because they're in such close relationship with us. So you can't, I think, be an effective leader and hold people at arm's length. They have to know you and you
Yeah.
have to let them into your heart. And it's tough because a lot of them don't make it. And a lot of times you spend a lot of time and energy developing people who backstab you or don't
Mm.
appreciate you, or leave with no notice, or there's things like that that happen. But I really feel it's a lot like
Yeah.
dating.
Yeah.
You have to just keep putting yourself
Relationship.
out
Yeah.
there in faith that the
Mhm.
right person will come along, and that is the person that's going to be on your team. But you can't be surprised when things don't work out, because there's more people who are not built for my team than there are people who are built for
Yeah.
my team. So I just have to like kind of kiss a lot of frogs to get the right
Oh,
people on board, and that's all I do all day these
nice.
days is kiss
Nice.
frogs. So
Well, I have this
yeah,
kind of like a driving thought that I want to be driven by love, not fear. And a lot of agents are so
right.
fearful of stepping into remote, but they're not going to do it.
Hmm.
They're not going to do it because of the fear. But if they thought about the love of their staff and the love of their business and their dreams, I think a lot of people would step more into that arena as far as being remote. And let's be honest, it's happening whether leaders and owners want it to happen or not. It's happening because of people
Right.
like you and I are hiring those people from all across the this
Yeah.
America, and changing the environment from in person to remote. But keeping that culture is so important to me. And I think that there's I've what I've learned over my journey is that some of the most controlling leaders I've ever met were just the most fearful. They're afraid that if they give somebody a computer and let them go home, they will take advantage of them. They'll abuse them. Let's be
Right.
honest. That's what they're afraid of. They won't work. So
Right.
I think my thing that I've learned from this whole thing, and it sounds like you have too, is just I want to be driven by the love of people and love my dream and just leading other people to a better life. And I think that the best way to change the world in America is for better leaders, better owners, better business owners, better leaders
Truly.
can impact. You've been able to impact 25 people's lives directly. That's a big deal. And how many
Yeah.
people are they impacting because of you? Do they have kids, husbands, wives, family members that are so positively impact parents
Parents.
because of
Yeah.
your journey of putting other people
Yeah.
first? And that's where you start to see the spider web really spread out in your impact. It
Sure.
goes way beyond the employees and customers. So kudos to you. And you've learned that
It does.
leadership is not a title,
Thanks.
it's a choice, right? People have decided to follow you.
Absolutely. Well, and we have fail safes. We make sure that does not happen too. So my husband is also extremely data
Yeah.
driven, and he spends his entire day analyzing data to benefit our agency. And truly, if anyone ever was to attempt to take advantage of us or not work or things like that, he would notice that within a matter of hours and it would be addressed. So I think if you have the right processes in place, that's really not a concern. The problem is that it takes some time and some intentionality to set these processes and procedures in place. And that, I think, is what is most daunting to leaders and the reason why they are hesitant to do that. But if you have those processes in
Yes.
place, then these things can flourish and you don't have to have your thumb on it. It kind of does its own
So true.
thing and you get to kind of be along for the wonderful
That's
journey.
awesome. So I want to ask you this question before we wrap up. I want you to think about a younger leader. Doesn't have to be a young person, but maybe somebody that's earlier in their leadership journey or career. Maybe they're not even a leader yet. What kind of advice did you get or have you learned along your journey that you could pass on to somebody like your daughter's age that's coming into leadership?
Yeah. I think leadership comes with a lot of
Mm.
life lessons. And so I think in order to be an effective leader, you're not going to get there overnight. It's something that you really have to
Yes.
develop over
Mhm.
years of struggling, because you don't truly appreciate things until you've been through some really
I
terrible
agree.
things. And so that gives you the perspective. And so, life in general, I think you have to have just some life experience. But there are ways that you can catapult yourself. Number one, by surrounding yourself with like
Mm.
minded individuals who are doing something with themselves and cutting the people out of your life that aren't doing things with themselves. I mentioned that my husband is very good with structure and boundaries, and if someone's a whiner or a complainer or has a victim mindset, they just don't have space in our space. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So we don't do that at all. This is a place of no
So true.
negativity. Our home and our life in general, we just that's just something that we live by. And so I think that you can kind of increase that speed, um, to get to that place by studying other people. I think the like I said, the John C. Maxwell leadership course is incredible. He's an incredible author and speaker, and so just studying people who have led amazing teams. If Jocko Willink is also amazing, uh, and
Oh,
David
yeah.
Goggins, people who have been incredible leaders of teams, is I think the way that you can get yourself to that level so much faster, because you have a shortcut to kind of going through some of the struggles that other people have faced. You don't have to necessarily go through all of them
Yeah.
personally. So
I, I agree.
that's my
Well, great
advice.
advice. Is there anything else that you would like to leave? Just any other tips about leadership, being a business owner, business leader? Is there anything that you want to leave anybody else with?
I think I've just had something on my
Yeah.
heart
Let's
recently
hear it.
about leadership that I'll leave you with, and that's that I feel like being in leadership is very much like being in a
Mhm.
marriage, a healthy marriage. And so it's not something that you can set and forget. I think that's a huge mistake that people make as leaders is, you bring people on board and you teach them to do their job and you think like, oh, they're just going to go do their job. And that is not the way that it works at all. In order to maintain a healthy relationship with anyone, you have to invest time
So true.
and you have to be intentional about it. You've got to you spend time with them, just like if you're dating someone, you have to invest that time and that intentionality. And so with our team, we do an annual
Mhm.
retreat. We take them and their spouses and children all to a resort. We buy them massages. We hang out and have an incredible dinner, and we pay for their drinks, and
So cool.
everyone has time together. But I think that's something that so many people miss because people as humans, we have to
We
have
do.
connection. And if you don't have that with your team, they will go look for someone else who will give them that time and attention. And the best leaders among us will be the people who are willing to invest in their team
Wow.
members. And you that's the only way that you can really build something that you can long term be proud of, and that will sustain you. Otherwise, if you don't have that strong foundation of the people that are on your team, it will eventually
So
fall.
true. So true. Well, thank you for the great advice. Thank you for spending time with me. You're such a pleasure,
Yeah,
and I love learning from you and just getting to speak with you. So I look forward to it. And I know there's going to be some listeners who want to know or interested in learning more about you. Where can they follow you,
sure.
connect with you?
Yeah, well, my email is
Okay.
kristinmaxwell@allstate.com, and they can also find me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm kind of
Yeah, you
cool.
are.
My kids don't think so, but I'm on some social media.
I
So, yeah, they can find me
Okay,
there.
great. What on social media? Just Kristen Maxwell with an I,
Yeah.
Kristin.
Yes, with an
So
I.
we will
That's
put
right. Yep,
links to
Kristin
your
Maxwell.
personal or whatever you feel comfortable sharing and your email
Yeah.
in the show notes.
I'm super
Okay,
open.
great.
I'll share
I
anything.
want to just thank
Yeah,
you for coming on the show one more time. I will see you in Texas. Look forward
absolutely.
to seeing
I
you and your husband
know.
and your mom, your daughter. Super excited to see them again. And every listener out there, I just want to thank you again for supporting and listening to The Conviction of a Leader. Before you are done listening to this episode, please turn on the notifications, like, comment, share this with your friends or family. If Kristen impacted your life, please share it. put it on social media, share it with Kristin, share it with your friends and family. If you have questions for her or I, reach out. We are more than welcome to help you. And we look forward to you staying a listener and being part of the Conviction of a Leader community. And we look forward to meeting some of you. So thank you all for tuning in today. And
Thanks so much.
we're done. So he'll turn it off here in a second.